Today was a max effort throwing day. A bunch to dive in. I started with knee throws, roll-ins, rocker, and step back throws. Then I did a physical assessment that showed me a lot of the findings of how my body actually likes to work. Lastly, I'm gonna dive into rate of force development and elasticity training, which is something that I'm working on because I have a good strength base. Let's dive right in. So with the knee throws, why am I kind of doing this? Well, the knee throws really expose how efficient your upper half really is. And so studies have shown that you throw about 80% of your max velo off the mound from your knees. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna do the knee throws. And when I did them, I was only able to get up to 74 miles an hour. See, I was at 74, which will put me at 92.5 miles an hour off the mound. And I'm already above that in flat ground throws. Like I'm throwing 93 on my flat ground throws, so it just exposed how inefficient my upper half really is. And one of the big things that I really felt was that I was just spinning off. I was on my knees, and then all I would do was I'll pull here, and then I was just spinning off like that. It was very rotational, and it felt like my arm was just dragging and it was out. And I did feel some discomfort in my arm just from doing these throws. And I think it's because I just, rotate right here, and then it's like I'll leave my arm out to hang, and obviously the velo goes down. And so what I need to focus more on is staying through, being a little bit more linear, instead of it just being right here and then trying to pull as hard as I can with my glove arm to throw. It's gonna be more like I'm here and then I'm staying through the ball and really feeling that energy transfer into my arm and using this as something that blocks, and then as soon as this blocks, then the energy transfers into the arm and into the throat. And so that's something that I'm not doing very well, and it's reflecting in my velo. I should be throwing like upper 70s, close to 80 with these knee throws, but I wasn't even close to doing that. And so that's something that I'm working on. Try to get this to 80, which would mean I have a pretty efficient upper half. And so if I combine that with my lower half, which is pretty good, then it should help me throw, 100 miles an hour, which is the ultimate goal. Next, I dove into roll-ins, rocker throws, and step back throws. So why roll-ins? Well, with the roll-ins, it really helps me to feel separation and spinal extension, right? Because you're facing the target, you're stepping, and then throwing. And what you need to do with your torso is you need to counter rotate into separation. And I'm also feeling spinal extension because I'm right here. Some people can just go here, feel the separation and throw, but for me, I like to load into things. It takes me a little bit of time to get that force production, which I'm gonna dive into a little bit with my physical assessment. I'm loading into it right here and I'm feeling spinal extension. And as soon as my front foot lands, I'm getting that lead leg block and it just explode from there. For me, it's just teaching me how to use my spine a little bit better. I've had a couple procedures on my back, and so that's another weak point for me. And I think that's why, my knee throws aren't that great, is because I'm not very good at using the spine. And, the term is like the spinal engine, being able to use the spine to drive the throw. That's a weak point for me. And so that's something that I need to start working on a little bit more. Rockers, this is one of my favorite drills, and this is something I started incorporating again from the findings of my physical assessment. But with the rockers, I have a wide stance, and all I'm doing is feeling that weight shift from side to side. I'm feeling it from the front leg to the back, front to back. And when I'm ready to throw, I'm on my front, and then all the weight comes onto my back leg, and I'm feeling that. And why I'm starting to incorporate this is because I want to feel relaxed. I don't want to feel rushed. I've always been working on the drift and really trying to be explosive and quick to the plate. But what I'm kind of finding is that it's not really working too well for me. And so this just teaches me how to, stay back and control my center of mass. And again, this isn't something that's best for everyone, but it's something that works for me, and I'll dive into it. And then obviously the step backs for a similar thing, just being able to control my center of mass, really feeling the center of mass go from the front to the back, and not being like too much on the back leg, because then I'll get stuck over the rubber, right? But not being way too forward where I feel rushed. It's like in that middle point where it's like, okay, I'm neutral, and then I fire. And that's when I'm able to throw at my best because, again, I'm in that perfect zone. I'm able to control my center of mass to be able to fire. And so I talked a lot about my physical assessments. And so basically what I did was, I went through a bunch of physical assessments. I did like depth jumps, all of these types of jumps with, tech. And basically what it found was that I can produce force, an enormous amount of force, like outlier amount of force. I'm very strong, I can get that force, but I'm not very good at tapping into it quickly. And so like with the depth jumps, where you jump off a box and then you jump, I was spending too much time on the ground, which means that, I'm able to produce that force, but I'm not able to do it quickly. And so I was thinking about it, and it's like, okay, so this comes back to the pitching delivery where I've been working on, drift, pulse, and being really quickly getting to the plate. But what I kind of realized was that that kind of delivery is good for people who are able to tap into their force really, really quickly and able to turn on their muscles really, really quickly. But I'm just not that guy. I take a little bit of time to get that force production, right? And so when I rush and I do the pulse, I'm missing out on a lot of force that I could be putting in. How I like to visualize it is like, if you have all of this force, right, that you're able to produce, which is, like strength and power and all of that. But if you're not able to tap into that very much, then this is all the force. And then I feel like I was only tapping into like 50% of it because I was rushed and I was getting into these really quick positions, right? And I wasn't giving my body a little bit more time to actually produce that force. Now, when I went back and, okay, I'm gonna slow down my delivery just a little bit, which is very counterintuitive. And it's not something that works for everyone, but it worked for me. And so with the rocker, as you can see, like I'm right here, and then my drive leg is more like load, and then throw gas, right? And so when I switched to that, I immediately got like a 3 to 4 mile an hour increase just because of this, where I'm giving my body a little bit more time to tap into more force. And so I'm tapping into way more force than I was before, just by giving myself a little bit more time. And so that's what I found with my physical assessment is, I have an outlier amount of force, but I'm not tapping into any of it. And so, the ultimate goal is to be really quick and be able to tap into all of this and really, like in a really, really quick fashion. And that's something that I'm training in this, which I'll get into in a little bit. But for me right now and how my body likes to work is like, I need to give myself a little bit more time to, get my center of mass going, get my force production going on my back leg. And so these drills really help me, which is the rocket drill, the step back drill, really learning center of mass and being relaxed and giving my body a little bit more time to get that force production into the arm. And so that's kind of why my delivery has kind of changed in the past couple of days where, I've really been feeling the drift. I thought that, the quicker I can get down the mound, the harder I'll throw. But this physical assessment really opened my eyes to, okay, maybe I'm an athlete that takes a little bit more time to produce force. And, that's okay. We'll work on that. As I get quicker and better at producing force quicker, then that's how I'm going to get to the next level. And this ties into really nicely into my last point, which is with the lifting side today. Well, what did we do? Well, I did rate of force development and elasticity type training, where a lot of it is like overcoming ISOs, right? So we started off with a belt squat right here, hooked on something that isn't, gonna lift up. And so all we're doing is max effort for 3 to 5 seconds. We're pushing into it as hard as we can. What does an overcoming ISO do? Well, it helps with rate of force development. It helps with recruiting more muscle fibers. A lot of these things, it actually helps with tendon training, leads to stiffer tendons. And stiffer tendons mean, more elasticity. If you have loose tendons, then if you think of it like a bow and arrow, right? The tighter it is, right, the harder it is to pull back, but the more force that comes back. If it's loose, you can just pull it back and there's not much force, right? And so that's what the overcoming ISOs are teaching. And then we did a French contrast with elasticity training, which is just a lot of plyos, really moving quickly. As soon as I'm hitting the ground, I'm trying to get up as quickly as possible. And as you can see, I'm a little bit slow right now, but that's what I'm training. And as I get a little bit more advanced, I can start incorporating more like band stuff, even band resisted, where it's pulling me down really quick and I have to get out of that, or band assisted even, where it's helping me be really light on my feet and getting up and down really, really quickly. And so that was the bulk of my weightlifting today, was overcoming ISOs supersetted with elasticity training. We did this with a squat, 2 double-legged. We did it with a split stance. And we also did it with bench, where we did an overcoming ISO, pushing as hard as we can, and then doing a medicine ball chest pass. And then the last thing that we did was a heavy dumbbell supermax negative. And so basically what it is grabbing something that is heavier than a 1 rep max, right? And then lowering it as slowly as possible. What this pretty much does is it develops crazy amounts of strength in the eccentric portion of the lift, right? And so in the throw, we don't really have to be really strong in the pecs concentrically, but we need to be really strong eccentrically and isometrically, because when we're in these ranges, it's your pec has to stabilize your arm for the tendons to do its work. And this is a whole rabbit hole in of itself. But with the pecs, you want to be really strong eccentrically to be able to absorb force and then redirect it and have the tendons do the work. And so this is kind of what we did today. Overall, it was a good day with the roll-ins. My velo isn't too great right now, but I was up to 86 with this. With my rocker throws, I was up to like 90, and with my step backs, I actually PR'd, which is awesome. And I was able to get up to 92 miles an hour. And so I'm really excited to see what I can keep getting up to. I think this is a really big part of my velocity bump that I'm seeing right now. I'm seeing like a 2 to 3 mile an hour increase. And also just knowing my body and knowing that I'm someone who takes a little bit more time to produce force, and actually putting that into action, into my delivery, has been really, really huge. And this is all stuff that was programmed to me with the help of the coaches at the Pitcher Lab. And so if you're a guy who's wanting to increase pitching velocity and you don't really know what to do to actually continue to increase pitching velocity, then you can let us know at the Pitcher Lab.